Did your teacher email me? Not as of 2 hours ago when I last checked my email. No. I'm happy to mark you absent at 2 o'clock. If your school or your parents let me know, then it can be excused. So, last we left off, we were finishing Class B Airspace. Class B Airspace. And if I recall correctly, and I'm pretty sure I am, we finished it. So now we're going to go to Class Charlie Airspace. Or Class C Airspace, if I can get the sequence. There it is. So first, let's take a peek on a sectional VFR chart that has a scale of 1 to what? Scale to 1 to 5 what? 500,000, yeah, okay. So I'd like you to open it up to, and let's look at Fresno. Conveniently, setting right smack on top of the Fresno Yosemite International, holy smokes, they used to call it Fresno Air Terminal Airport, is a Class Charlie airspace. Question, Jonathan? How do you get your name changed? You go to court. Oh, as an airport, if you own the airport, you can change the name. So the city of Fresno, they probably voted on it at the Fresno City Council, and they got silly. What was the matter with FAT? It's still FAT. You can't change the FAA identifier. And let's face it, I mean, do more people fly into Fresno to go to Yosemite than used to? I don't know. I don't really care. Let's look at the Fresno Air Terminal, FAT. You'll notice there's Class Charlie airspace around it, and you'll notice that there's 2 circles. Now, it's hard to see some of the circle, but they're light-colored magenta. That's all I got, man. That's all the sectional charts I got. So we're looking at Fresno. Fresno is Class Charlie airspace. You'll notice there's 2 circles around Fresno. Can I say Fresno? Okay, I'll try to say Fresno instead of Fresno. Has anybody ever used a Fresnel lens? Yeah, me neither. But there is such a thing as a Fresnel lens, but at the moment I couldn't tell you what it is. So we're looking at Fresno Yosemite International. It has Class Charlie airspace. It is a very simple upside-down wedding cake in that it only has 2 layers. Generally speaking, let's just for fun, wow, I could have even more fun. It's like I've done this before. Or you can play with your very own. Let's measure, and you can scooch over. Do you know how to scooch? Yeah, that's right. You're good at scooching. You can share. I want you to measure the diameter. Actually, let's make it hard. Measure the radius of the smaller circle. I want to know what the radius is. The radius from the center of the airport to the first light magenta circle. From the center of the airport to the first circle. What's the radius of that circle? Yeah. 5 nautical miles. Okay, what's the radius of the big circle? I hear a 10, I hear another 10, I hear 11, 10. It's hard to know exactly where the center of that airport it is. All right, so that's very typical. That's very typical. So it ought to say somewhere in there that does it say that it's Class Charlie airspace anywhere? Does it say it says Class C in the upper right-hand corner just above and to the right of the circle? Okay, so it's identified as Class C airspace. Fresno Class C. Ooh. No, sorry, Fresno Class C. Fresno Class C. Now, how high? There's 2 circles. The circle that's right smack on top of the airport, how far down does it go? Surface, that's what SFC stands for. Surface, it goes from the surface of the ground all the way up to, how far? 44 feet. No, that's not correct. It goes much higher than 44 feet. 4,100 feet. Yeah, that's right. It goes up to 4,400. Hey, let's think about that for a second. 4,400. I'm flying along in my airplane. Do I hope that these numbers are AGL or MSL? I hope they're MSL, because if I've got my altimeter set correctly, pow, I'm reading MSL on my indicator. So where did they pick 400 feet from? Why not just 4,000 even? It's not because of the obstructions, although that's not bad. What? The altitude of the airport. What is the elevation of this airport, of Fresno? Go ahead and look. It's on there. It's in blueprint. You didn't scooch far enough, Brian. It's in blueprint. It's got data about the Fresno airport. It's in blue. It's like CT is for control tower, and it probably has ATIS, ATIS. 336 feet. Oh, so you think the airport's 336 feet above sea level, Brian? Yeah, 336 feet above sea level is the height of the airport. So yeah, round that up and it's 400 feet. So how high is this center circle in the middle? How high above the ground is it approximately? Above the ground. It's really close to 4,000. It's not even 4,100, is it? Okay, so it's just a hair over 4,000 feet. So, okay. Now let's look at the outer ring. Well, if we still look at the inner ring, so the inner ring goes from surface to approximately 4,000 feet AGL, approximately 4,000 AGL. So now let's look at the outer ring. We've got a 10-mile radius, but does the outer ring, does it go all the way to the ground? No. Okay, Rodrigo, you have a chance to redeem yourself. Does it go up to 44 feet? Tell me the altitude of the outer ring. From how low to how high? Okay, it goes from 1,600 to 4,400. So the top of it is the same as the center piece, but you could fly underneath it because it doesn't start until you're 1,600 feet above the ground. If you look at the screen I've got up here, you'll notice over here in the bottom right-hand corner, you can fly underneath it. And Rodrigo says the bottom of this is at 1,600 feet MSL, so I could fly down here at 1,500 feet MSL, and I'd be 1,500 feet above the ground. That means I could have obstacles, because Fresno's kind of congested, right? So I could be 1,000 feet above 500-foot obstacles and be there at 1,500 feet, and I would not be inside of Class C airspace. I don't have to call them up. Now, just like Class B airspace can be chopped up different ways, let's look to the left of Fresno Airport and find Fresno Chandler Airport. It's not towered, so the color of it is magenta. I know, it's kind of reddish, purplish. Okay, so if you find Fresno Chandler Airport, it's only about 7 miles away from Fresno Airport. But what I want you to do is look at that there's a line there's an altitude and there's magenta lines. There's an altitude in magenta just below and to the right of Fresno Chandler Airport. It says 44/25. So what does anybody know what Rodrigo said? It came down to 1,600 feet. What is it doing over there by Chandler Airport? Correct. The bottom of it is really up there at 2,500 feet. Now, I think what's interesting, look what's next to purple, that magenta line. What is it really, really close to? The equator. No, it's not close to the equator. What are those other lines on the ground that are parallel and right next to that purple? The roads, yeah, double line, so that's a freeway. And there's also, it's almost right smack on top of a railroad track. So if you were flying from an airport and you wanted to go to Fresno Chandler Airport, do you see where Highway 99 is? Highway 99 is about a mile away from that purple line. So you could fly right smack on top of the highway, but if you were below 2,500 feet, you would not be airspace, and you wouldn't have to call them up. So I would read Lee and I to Reedley Airport and go west towards the Selma Airport, and then turn and follow the freeway to get to that airport. I would be in Class C airspace. All right, so now we have so you'll notice above it, above Class C airspace, in a box with white and magenta, CTC, contact, Fresno approach, within 20 nautical miles on 1.95 and 250, that 300, that's UHF, and that's military. So that's one frequency. And if we go below the Class C airspace, it says contact, Fresno approach, within 20 nautical miles on 132.5. So essentially, they're saying that there's probably one air traffic controller that is handling airplanes coming from the north to land at Fresno, and there's a different air traffic controller that is talking to airplanes coming up from the south, telling us what frequency to talk on. Now, legally, you don't have to talk to them until just before you get in there. They're asking you to call them 20 miles out. And how big is that outside ring? What's the radius of that big outside ring? 10 nautical miles, so 20 miles. It's easy to see how far 20 miles would be because it's twice that length. Of course, if I was flying into the Fresno airport and I had a GPS, would I probably set it to tell me how many miles to get to the airport? Yeah. So when it says 25 or 23, I'm already going to be looking at this. I'll just call them up, and I'd say something like this. I'd say Fresno approach, and it's just like if I Tomahawk 3435 Juliet, 22 miles south, at 2,000 feet, squawking 1200 with information X-ray, request landing Fresno. And then you'd let go of the key and you'd wonder, are they going to say anything because I left the S out of Fresno? Or are they just going to think I have a lisp and can't say S's? They're certainly going to let go of the key. Yeah. Well, would it be great if they came back and said, Tomahawk 3435 Juliet, this is Fresno approach, squawk 7100, descend and maintain 1,500 feet. You'll prepare to land on runway 29 or left. See how many times they could put Fresno in there? Isn't that great? I think that'd be great. There's an air traffic controller out there somewhere that would do that. Okay, so interestingly enough, this is all written up based on never looking at the Fresno Class C airspace. You're going to see Class C airspace, so now you probably ought to make sure you're taking some notes. You're only going to find Class C airspace at an airport, on top of an airport that has a control tower. And it's going to be essentially, why is there Class Bravo airspace, Class B airspace? Because it's so stinking busy, they want everybody on the radar, and they want everybody to control, and they want everybody on a clearance, and they're going to give traffic separation to everybody in Class B airspace. Class C airspace is for airports that are not busy, but but it's busy enough. Like how many jets, how many airliners fly in and out of Fresno? About what, one every 15 minutes, one every 30 minutes? I don't know. I haven't gone out there and sat at the airport since I was a kid. Watch the F-15s take off. Of course, back then they were F-4s. Let's just say for fun, they have an airliner take off or land once every 15 minutes. They really don't want little dinky airplanes that are 6 miles away from the airport to run into them. Has anybody ever been in a little dinky airplane and ran into an airliner? I understand it's not fun. I've never talked to anybody that did it. There was a big crash in San Diego in the 1970s. A Cessna 172, like what I fly, ran into a Boeing 727. Everybody died. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody on both airplanes died. Yeah, everybody died. Yeah, it was a 720. It was going into San Diego. You can look it up on the interweb. It's that thing where all the computers on the planet are hooked up together magically. I think there's some magic involved. Well, money is certainly involved. All right, so, and they're going to have, in addition to the fact that Class C is going to be on top of an airport with a tower, it's going to have to be moderately busy, and they're going to have radar. And when I say radar, who doesn't know what radar is? Come on, somebody confess. Oh, okay, great. It'll be on the test. In 10 sentences or more, explain the theory of operation of radar. You'll just put it on the test. Radar is, I'm going to give you the short version. I'll tell you what to write down after I'm done. You take a radio, and you turn it on, and you transmit radio waves, and they go at the speed of light. And that's really fast. I can't walk nearly as fast. If I ran, maybe I could get close. And it hits something, and some things will absorb that radio energy, that radio wave. But a lot of it will that metal airplane, and it'll go back. Some of that energy will bounce off right back to the transmitter. So that radar antenna has to turn on, and then turn off, and then listen, and wait for that radio wave. It's just a radio wave to come back and hit it. And there's a computer hooked up to it, and at times, when it turns on the radio wave and then turns itself off, and it waits for it to come back, it listens to how long in time that is. And if you know how fast radio waves go, and it takes a second to get there and a second to come back, then the computer says, aha, it took 2 seconds. It can calculate how many miles that is, except it's not really 1 second each way. It's like 0.000000001 seconds. But it calculates what that distance is. And the computer also knows where was the antenna pointed. So if the antenna was pointed straight west, and it took a certain length of time, the computer goes, aha, the radar antenna was pointed straight west, and it took this much time, so now that airplane is 10 miles in that direction. On the screen, on the scope, the air traffic controller can see a blip, a little blob, that's 10 miles away in that exact direction. So that's what radar is. Now, radar came out just before it was actually getting popular in World War II. You probably ought to take that really college class called Aviation History, and it talks about using a lot of radar in World War II to pick up enemy airplanes. I mean, it was in the reading assignment, even if it's not in the lecture. And I'm sure everyone in college classes always reads all the reading assignments, he said, with a wink of his eye. So in the old days, that's all the controllers had. You talked to them on the radio, and you said, "Okay, I'm 10 miles to the west," and they'd look and they'd see a blip, and they'd say, "Okay, great, now they know where they are," but all it is a blip. Nowadays, there's also that transponder, so that 4-digit code is right next to your blip. And if you've got mode C and you're transmitting the altitude that's inside of your static system, it'll also have your altitude. They can actually type in your N number when you call them up. So they can have this blip with your registration, your N number, your squawk code, your altitude. Sweet. But in the old days, all they had was the blip. Now you got all that good stuff. So what that means is, if the controller has a jet coming in that's 15 miles away, do you have to call them up if you're 15 miles away? Now, they want you to call 20 miles out, but I'm going to tell you, you don't have to talk to them until just before Class C. If you're going to land at Fresno, they'd like you to call them 20 miles an hour, but if you call them 11 miles out, they probably won't say no. So they can see that airplane, and they know where the airliners are, and they can tell the airliners to look out the window, because the airliner's IFR traffic, but they can actually tell the airliner to climb or descend or turn left or turn right. So the reason this Class C airspace is there is because that's where the airliners are. Now, it only goes up to 4,000 feet, but most of that traffic is down there. Besides airliners, how fast do they climb in altitude? Well, let's just make up a good number. How about 5,000 feet a minute? and then past about 20,000 feet, how about 3,000 feet a minute? Yeah, 5,000 feet is 1 minute, 10,000 feet, second minute, 15,000 feet, 20,000 feet, then we slow down. It doesn't take 10 minutes to get to altitude, to get to 30-some thousand feet in a jet. In any case, so most of the time, the inner ring that goes all the way to the surface goes up to, now granted, 1,200 AGL, but what was ours at Fresno? It was just a hair over, about 1,500 feet, okay. And then most of them, the outer ring goes up to 10 miles and 4,000 feet AGL, and ours goes to just a hair over 4,000, right? So this is here at Fresno, it's pretty close to what's typical. And just like, you'll notice, do you have to have a private pilot certificate on this list? Does this list say private pilot certificate? No, you don't. So you can be a solo student pilot and fly in there with no special endorsement. The instructor, you could be flying in Bakersfield, taking flying lessons in Bakersfield, and you tell your instructor, hey, Mr. Instructor, Mrs. Instructor, I want to fly to Fresno for my cross country, and your instructor could sign you off even though they never flew with you in that Class C airspace. So you don't need a private pilot certificate to go in there. And let's see, but you do need a Mode C transponder. So the equipment you have to have is the same. You got to be able to talk on the radio, and you got to be able to transmit Mode C. Question? Bakersfield to Fresno, if you're doing 90 knots, it's about 110, 120 nautical miles. So now 50 hour and 20, including taxiing around at both ends. So there is one difference when you're talking on the radio. When you go into Class B airspace, you're going to tell them where you are, all that regular stuff, and then they're going to say those words. They're going to say 3435 Juliet, you are cleared into Class Bravo airspace. They're going to say that word cleared. But do that with Class Charlie airspace. As long as you call them up and they repeat back to you your N number, you have established two-way radio communication before you entered it. They're not going to say you're cleared to enter the airspace. It's only Class B. So let's just say for fun, let's look at our chart and go, okay, let's say we're going to take off out of Reedley and we want to go to Fresno Airport, Fresno Yosemite Airport. So we would take off from Reedley and then make a right turn and go northwest towards the airport. And as soon as we got off the ground, we're already less than 20 miles away, right? So we're going to want to call them as soon as we can. Well, I bet you even at 200, 300, 400 feet off the ground, our radios will be able to get to the Fresno Yosemite Airport air traffic controllers. So when I'm like 500 feet off the ground, I'm going to make my turn and roll out, and I'm going to be all ready. And I'm going to hit my mic, and I'm going to say Fresno approach. I'm not going to say Fresno Class C airspace. But approach is what you call them when you're arriving, and departure is what you call them when you're leaving, even if you're talking to the same person. For instance, if I took off out of Fresno and went straight south, talking to the tower, and I'm talking to Fresno departure, but it's still going to be on 132.35. If I'm coming in from the south, I'm still going to talk to them on 132.35, but I'm going to call them Fresno approach. So I'm going to say Fresno approach, 3435 Juliet, just departed Reedley International Airport. Say international. Just departed Reedley Airport, squawking 1200, climbing out of 400 feet for whatever I think I'm going to climb to, 1,500. And I probably would have tried to listen to the ATIS first with information Juliet. And they would give me a squawk. They'd say 3435 Juliet. And they might give me an altitude. They might say climb and maintain 2,000 feet. They'd certainly give me a squawk 2917. And then they'd say straight in landing runway 29 left, because that shorter runway is where they usually have the little airplanes land. And of course I'd repeat it back to them. But they never would say cleared into Class C airspace. But I know it's okay to go in because they've said my N number. So here, this is what it would sound like if I took off and I said this, and they didn't want me to go in. I call it Fresno approach, 3435 Juliet, just departed Reedley Airport. Squawking 1200 out of 500 feet for 1,500. Squawking 1200 with information Juliet, request landing Fresno. And they'd say, aircraft calling Fresno approach, stand by. You see how they didn't say my N number? I can't go into Class C airspace because they didn't say my N number. So I'd probably turn towards, I'm probably close to turning towards the airport. I'd be looking on my chart, make sure I didn't go into the Class C airspace, and I'd probably, and they're usually pretty good. In a minute or two, they're going to come back and say, aircraft calling Fresno just departed Reedley. Say your request. Or wait for a couple of minutes, and I'd say, I'm renting this airplane for $5 a minute. I just sit here flying around in circles, not the whole time. But I've flown circles and squares, and I want to go somewhere. You could pick up the radio again, and just same thing again. 5 and say the whole thing with information Juliet, blah, 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 blah. And hopefully this time they'll say 3435 Juliet. Bam! It's like as soon as they said those words to me, wherever the airplane was, I would be turning it towards the airport. So you don't have to say get cleared in, but they got to say your N number. And I've actually had that happen to me at an airport that was busy. And they said, stand by. And I was about 3 miles from heading their airspace, so I went into a turn so I wouldn't go into the airspace. All right, let's talk about Class D airspace, sometimes called Class Delta airspace. So just for fun, let's see if we can go north. In fact, we can. Let's look at Modesto. No, let's look at Modesto Airport. If you go up Highway 99, there's actually 3 Class D airspace airports. There's Modesto, but farther to the southeast of Modesto is Castle Airport, and then, Castle Airport. I guess there's just those 2. But let's look at Modesto. Now, there's VOR sitting on top of that airport, so you can see that big compass rose, but that big giant compass rose over Modesto Airport is not telling you that there's... Around the Modesto Airport is that blue dash line. It's that blue dash line. So it says Modesto City County, S-H-A-M, Sham. You okay? All right. You don't have any splinters in your eye? Broken a piece of wood and got splinters in there? Oh, man, I hate that. That happened once to me. My eye, man, I'm not even going to talk about the things that happened to my eye because of that splinter. You ought to wear safety goggles when you're breaking, because when the splinters go flying and they poke you, oh, man. It hurt. But, oh, man, it's weird when you're looking. You go to the doctor and let them take it out after they give you drugs and you pass out because you don't want to be there when they're pulling stuff out of your eye. I'm telling you. You don't even like being there while somebody's driving you to the hospital and there's a splinter sticking out of your eye and your other eye can see the splinter in your other eye because it's sticking out like an inch. I'm telling you. No. If you yank it out, then all the fluid comes out and your eye deflates. You don't want your eye to deflate. Anybody ever had a deflated eye? Oh man, that is bad news. You can't. Your eyelid hits the splinter. Yeah. I'm saying this so you'll wear goggles when you. Huh? Yeah, of course it hurt. Mostly I was just scared. Fortunately, at one point I got so scared I passed out. That was awesome. Because then I wasn't scared. When I was unconscious, I was not scared at all. But when I woke up, I said, "Where's the morphine?" But that's Prescription morphine, just so we're clear. Let's look at Modesto Airport. So there's Modesto Airport. CT is control tower, 125.3. There's a star, and then a C with a dark circle around it. It's got control lighting. ATIS is 127. No, I'm good. This is more fun to read it upside down. 127.7. If I got bad breath, let me know. You'll notice 99 is the, let's see. I can't remember what's 99. What is it on Fresno Airport? 99, that's how many feet above sea level it is. And 59, the longest runway is 5,900 feet. And I'd have to look up and see what 122.95 is. That's probably Unicom. Right pattern, runway 10 right and runway 28 right. And the reason they're telling you the pattern here is because normally if you fly into an airport with a control tower, they'll tell you which pattern. But what if it's at night and the control tower closes at 10 o'clock and you're landing at 11 o'clock at night? You have to know. So why? Can you think of why they would want you doing right patterns? You're in the way of something. Yeah, either there's some neighborhood they don't want you to fly over or something's going on. All right. Now, this doesn't say this is Class Delta Airport D, but that blue dotted line means it's a Class D airport. In fact, let's look down at Lemoore Naval Air Station with those two runways. Let's look at Lemoore Naval Air Station with those two runways. Down here. It's a bigger airport area, isn't it? But it's still that blue dotted line. Now, granted, we're not likely to fly into Lemoore Naval Air Station, but based on this chart, it's also a Class D airspace. So you could take off out of Fresno and fly all the way down and get, what's that, like 6 or 7 miles away, and then just fly around it. Now, notice at Lemoore Naval Air Station, there's a kind of a square with a 2.7 in it. That 2.7 means the height of it goes up to 2,700 MSL. So I could overfly that at 2,800 MSL. And I wouldn't have to talk to him on the radio, even if it's a military airport. No, they won't do anything. They won't do anything. I mean, as you fly by, they'll point their cannons at you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't even know that they have any cannons. Let's look back to Modesto. How high is the Class D airspace in Modesto? 26 feet above sea level? No, that's not correct. 2,600 feet above sea level. Right. Now, that airspace goes up to and includes 2,600. So if you overflew Modesto, your altimeter was set correctly, and your altimeter said 2,600 feet, you're in Class D airspace. So you would have had to in advance. But if a minus sign in front of it, which they didn't, that would be up to but not including 2,600 feet. Does that really matter too much? How many people? Let's talk about Lemoore Naval Air Station. So if we say, okay, we can fly over that airport, if the altimeter was set correctly, and I'd listen to their ATIS and set it, and I overflew it at 2,800 feet on my altimeter, I'd be legal. But how stupid am I to only be 100 feet above it? What if I get busy eating my turkey sandwich and I drop my pickle on the floor, and I reach down to get my pickle, and then wipe it off with a napkin, so I can still eat my pickle? And during that time, I lose 101 feet, and I'm down below 2,700. Am I going to be happy? No. Why am I not going to be happy? Because they're not going to be happy. So, whether or not there's the minus sign in front of it that says, because if it said minus 27, I could fly over it at 2,700 feet. But as soon as I go down to 2,699, I'm busted. Am I going to fly over it at 2,700 feet? Am I going to fly over it at 2,800 feet with only 100 feet to spare? No, because I'm not stupid. What's that saying? My mother didn't raise no fool. Is that how it's? I know all of you can't say that. But thank you for chuckling. But if I'm going to overfly Lemoore Naval Air Station, I bet I'm going to go 27. 2700. So I don't know if it's got the minus sign or not. Good question. 20. It doesn't have the minus sign. 2700 is in Class D airspace. Right. If it has a minus, it means technically you can fly at 2700 and you're not in Class D airspace, but 1 foot lower. Why does anybody worry about that minus sign? The FAA does. It's on the written test. Your examiner could ask you this question on the oral exam. Does it really? Question, Brian, and then Joe. Yeah, Castle Airport. Oh, that's awesome. So, Castle Airport, there's an example. It says negative 20. There's has pencil in the way there. Castle Airport, it's the Modesto along the freeway. It says minus 20. Very good. So that means it only goes up to 1,999 feet. Why didn't they just write 19.999? I don't know. It's not my chart. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you on the test how big are these generally, because you'll notice. Look at these Class D airspaces. Is Modesto the same diameter as Castle? And is it either of those the same diameter as Lemoore Naval Air Station? No. And one's 20 and Modesto 99 feet, so 99 from 26, it's 2,500 feet. But then look at Castle, it's 118, but it's 2,000, so that Class D is not even 2,000 feet up. And then at Lemoore, it's 35 and 2,700. So their heights are all a little bit different, aren't they? So I'm not going to ask you how big or is a typical Class D, because if you need to know, you're not going to memorize 100 different Class D airspaces. You're just going to look on the chart. All right. Class D is the same as Class C when it comes to you have to talk on the radio. Just like Class C, where you got to get them to say your N number before you go into it, you got to get them to say your N number before you go. No, they won't say you're clear. They only do that for Class B. So if I was approaching Lemoore Naval, well, don't use Lemoore. Let's use Castle Tower. You listen to the ATIS. They got an ATIS. So blah, 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 blah. You'd say 3435 Juliet. Enter the left traffic pattern for this runway. Report 3 miles. They said my N number. That calling Castle Tower, stand by. Or aircraft calling Castle Tower, I'm busy, come back in 5 minutes. Then that means I can't go in there. And they know they were not to say your N number. They know if they say your N number, you can come in. So they're not going to say it if they don't want to. Mode C, on the other hand, you don't have to have it. You don't have to have Mode C to get into Class D airspace. You just got to have two-way radio communication. Any questions there on Class C? Class D, rather. All right. Now we're going to get funky. Is anybody familiar with the music genre funk? There's disco, and there's hip-hop, and there's rhythm and blues, and there's soul, and then there's funk. They're all slightly different, yes? Okay. That's also is how close soul music to heavy metal rock and roll versus light country. Do they have different kinds of country? I don't know. It's against my religion to sorry. I'm afraid I'll go to purgatory if I listen to one country song all the way through. Well, I guess I could, get absolution or something, but I'm just kidding. Is anybody in here listen to country music? All right, well, that's too bad. So there goes your A and your B. Sorry, Brian, you can't get an A or B in my class if you like country music. Now, do you like Western music? Say yes. Okay, well then, all right, you can get at least a D. Let's see. Western music is not nearly as what's a good way to put it? Oh yeah, boring as country music. It's okay. I'll see you later. So, Class E airspace, Class Echo airspace. Let's find it on our chart. So, let's go to Fresno, Yosemite. And you'll notice, coming off of runway 29 left and 29 right, and skimming just past the Reedley Airport, you see that magenta rectangle thing, and you notice one side of it is heavy, and it gets lighter towards the inside. It gets lighter towards the inside. Okay. So what this means is that Class E airspace goes down to 700 feet AGL. On the outside of it, at Reedley, it's not marked. So outside of it at Reedley, Class E airspace only goes down. You're going so what? The weather minimums in Class... So, well, let me back up. Okay. So let's say you're at Reedley Airport. You're not in Class E. There's no such thing as Class F. So at Reedley Airport, you must be in Class G. So you may recall that the basic VFR weather minimum is 3,152. 3 miles of visibility, 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below, and 2,000 feet to the side of clouds. But that's basic VFR. If you're in Class G, think of it like G is for not much government interference. The visibility and the clearance from clouds is less. You can have worse visibility and get closer to clouds inside of Class G. So if you look at that strip there, Echo airspace coming off of the runway out of Fresno, if you go above 700 feet inside of that POW, you got to have 3 and 1 and 5 and 2. And that's because that's where the airliners are all coming into land. And they don't want you to hit them, and they want to be able to tell them that there's traffic and then be able to look out the window and see you. So they might pop out of a cloud. So that's why you got to stay 2,000 feet horizontally from a cloud. They might pop out of a cloud. That's why you got to stay 500 feet below it. They might pop out of a cloud. That's why you got to stay 1,000 feet above clouds. And that's why you got to have 3 miles visibility. So you'll notice, okay, let's go to Lemoore Naval Air Station. You'll notice at Lemoore Naval Air Station, there's a big chunk of this Class E airspace that goes down 700 feet. So I'm going to keep saying this. If you see this magenta and you see it and it fades in towards the middle, everything in there around Lemoore Naval Air Station, it looks kind of like a keyhole with a notch on the top. If you're in there and you're above 700 feet, 3152. If you're below 700 feet, you're down there in Class G airspace, not much government interference, and the weather can be worse. But that's because the IFR jets aren't down there. By the time they get down below 700 feet, they're in the Class Delta airspace. And of course, you got to get radio contact before you go into Class Delta airspace. At the Fresno Airport, it's the same. They're descending to land on runway 29 left or 29 right, and by the time they get below 700 feet, they're in Class Charlie airspace, and you got to call and talk to them on the radio. So if you look at this, and just for fun, look at Chandler Airport. Fresno Chandler, that little magenta airport to the left and down a little bit from Fresno Air Terminal. Look at that Class Echo airspace coming down to 700 feet, kind of stretches out to the left and going to the south. Why in the world would they put that there? Because there is an instrument approach for IFR pilots coming into land at Chandler Airport. And they don't want you flying there above 700 feet unless you have 3 miles visibility, 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below, and 2,000 feet to the side of a cloud. So that's why there's that funky chunk over there where Class E airspace comes down to 700 feet. Outside of that, right to outside of that, Class Echo airspace only comes down to 1200. So let's look again there at Reedley. So let's say we're at Reedley, and we listen to the Automatic Weather Observation Service, the AWOS, at a Reedley, and it says ceiling 1,100 feet. Okay, 1,100 feet. How far do you have to be below clouds? 3152. What's the 5? Oh, now that's in echo. But I could take Reedley and I could climb up to 500 feet, let's say 600 feet. Now I've got 100, I can fly above 100-foot obstacles down there, and people and vessels and structure, and I'm 500 feet away and I'm 500 feet above. But I'm still 500 feet below the clouds. Woo-hoo-hoo. As I scooch over there, effectively, D Airspace go down to 700 feet when there's IFR traffic coming into land or take off out of an airport. And then everywhere else where it's not marked, you get Class E basically goes down to 1200. So now I can fly in lousier weather than 3152 if all the way now up to 700, all the way up to 1200 feet. All right, so let's see, let's find some more now. Let's look at Lemoore Naval Air Station. Now, Lemoore Naval Air Station, I have to let you know, their tower is not in operation all the time. But I want you to look down there at Lemoore Naval Air Station, and you'll notice there's a rectangle that's magenta in dotted lines sticking up on the top of their Class D airspace, and a little tiny rectangle sticking out of the bottom. So the question is, what is that? So let's have some practice looking at the legend on our chart. So let's look at the legend of your chart. It's probably on your left. And let's see if you can find a dotted magenta line. And what's SFC stand for? Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Surface above. SFC, surface. So if you click on the legend and you find that dotted line, it says Class E, SFC. Who hasn't found it? Because I'll point it out to you and laugh, really. Like that. So that magenta dotted line says that Class E airspace doesn't just come down to 700 feet. It goes all the way down to the surface. So Lemoore Naval Air Station, if you're above the north of the airport or slightly below it, that's really close to, they're saying, you know, we need a little more protected airspace for our IFR airplanes. They might be really low there. They might be lower than 700 feet. So we're just going to run that 3512 visibility all the way down to the surface. Now, in reality, so let's back up for a minute, because I don't want to freak you out. I mean, I want to freak you out other ways that are positive. But if it starts getting kind of overwhelming that there's all these things about airspace, I totally get it. But I want to go back to reality and practicality. If you're a brand new pilot, are you going to fly around in 1 mile visibility? If you do, you are very stupid and you're likely to die very soon. Please don't take anyone with you and don't fly my airplane. I mean, my airplane's insured, but it'll be a big pain in the butt to take all that money and then have to go find another airplane. So, are you going to fly if it's less than 3 miles visibility? Not as a brand new private pilot. I won't go. I got 1,000 hours flying little airplanes. I will not fly if it's less than 3 miles visibility, even if the FAA says I can, because I'm not stupid in that area of my life. Because if I can't see that far, what's the likelihood I might hit some other airplane that's being stupid and flying around in less than 3 miles visibility? It goes way up. What's my likelihood of, what if it's kind of misty and hazy and I don't notice those big 850-foot towers over by Orange Cove? Or Naval Incha, I guess it is. Or something else. It's not, or a mountain. And fly along at 1,500 feet, you can hit Campbell Mountain. It goes up to 1,700 feet MSO. So I'm not going to fly where the weather's worse than 3 miles visibility. So for practical purposes, for smart VFR pilots, you don't really care if there's airspace. where you can have less than 3 miles and still legally go, because you're never going to go there. At least I hope. That's my hope. I don't want you to go. I think you'll be very unhappy. The problem is somebody does it once or twice and they get away with it and they go, sweet, and then they do it all the time, and you only die doing that 1 out of 20 times. So Russian roulette, 1 out of 20, right? That means you'll average the 10th time before it kills you. That means the first 9, you think everything's awesome. And you might be one of the lucky ones, and you get to do it 19 times, and it still doesn't kill you. All right. So there's this Class E airspace. We've been talking about how low does it go. It goes all the way up to 14,500 feet. Wow. Unless otherwise specified. It goes all the way up to 14,500 feet. Unless otherwise specified. I don't know. I think we've had enough airspace for one day. Gentlemen, if you would fold up your stuff and put it on the table, I would greatly appreciate it.